Hello and welcome. We are now ready to begin today's webinar, Building Effective Work Relationships. My name is Eileen Nash, and I'm the Senior Program Coordinator with Rutgers Executive and Professional Education, and I will be your host and moderator for this webinar. Rutgers EPE is a proud sponsor of today's webinar, which highlights timely topic areas and issues in human resources, leadership, and management. We have formally allotted 45 minutes for today's webinar. You can send your questions throughout the presentation using the questions box. The orange arrow depicted here opens and closes your controls. With your controls open, you will see the questions box on the lower half and the send button on the lower right. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the archive version will be sent to you via email. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our instructor. Ron Guido, Rutgers EPE instructor, is a management consultant with a specialization in professional development and supply chain management. Ron, please take it away.
Thank you, Eileen, and welcome everyone. This program is a small overview of the larger half-day program, Building Effective Work Relationships, presented by the Rutgers Executive and Professional Education Program. So we're going to do a quick 20-minute overview of that half-day program. In the total program, the objectives are, as you see here on the screen, to identify characteristics of what makes for effective working relationships, delve into the participants' self-awareness of themselves, assessing their current relationships, and then identifying any opportunities for improvement. We apply a model for influencing others to accomplish their goals and to solve problems. And then as a part of a class exercise, we'll develop a personal plan for improving the work relationships. And then we talk a little bit about career management, because a lot of the working relationships do in fact influence your career progression. So we look at that in terms of what we call office persona, which is going to be discussed in this webinar. So we're going to begin by having the first of a few poll questions, and I'll turn it back to Eileen for that.
Okay, so the first poll question is, in your experience, what is the most significant outcome of having good work relationships with your coworkers? So we'll give you about 10 seconds. If you can pick one of the options, that would be great. Okay, now we're going to close the poll, and I'm going to read the results. So Ron, the results are 14% said adaptability to change, 29% said productivity, 29% said job satisfaction, 14% said sees new business opportunities, and 14% said career advancement.
Well, thank you, Eileen, and that's what that shows us is that, at least for this small sample, all do apply, and I think it's relevant to this particular program to see how, when you're working well with each other and in teams, the company benefits through increased productivity, for adapting to change and seeking new innovations and seizing opportunities, but it's also good for your personal development as well. So thank you for participating in that. I'm going to go back to the program now. So the outcomes of this program would be to gain a better understanding of the relationship between your personality, your communication style, and then your behavior at work. And understand these communication styles. We use a tool that we'll talk about in a moment to understand both your style and the styles of others. And therein lies the essence of this particular program, is to communicate better through an awareness of how you communicate and how others communicate, and where you need to bridge any gaps between those styles. And then third would be to learn ways to capitalize on your style and how to adapt to the other styles to improve everyone's work performance and in the long run advance your career. Here you are, cast right in the middle of your work environment. You've got many communication opportunities by managing up to your boss, or in some cases you have multiple bosses. You certainly have peers and teams that you interact with, and then you may have subordinates. And all these relationships require communication and require work at the communication, how it's delivered, and how you receive communication from others. So what constitutes a good, healthy working relationship? First and foremost, research has shown, this comes from the Mind Tools organization, trust is at the top of the list, foundation for every good relationship, whether at work or in your personal lives. We know that mutual respect is important, to value each other's input and their differences of opinion. Mindfulness is a good one. It simply means that you're accountable for your own words and actions, and you take responsibility for how you represent yourself in a team or in the work environment. We certainly want to embrace diversity and recognize that healthy relationships do require the valuing of other people's opinions and just their different communication styles. And then to be open and honest in your communication. We depend upon this, again, for advancing the work effort and as well as your career. So that's a list of 5 that we talk about in the program. And here's sort of an overview of the progression of the program. Is to build effective work relationships, we do start with self-awareness. And we spend some time recognizing how you may be different than others in your work environment. And we recognize that through an assessment of your personality, which we know drives your behavior. And then most of the program spent on the communication style, which drives those working relationships. So we know that people are important to your success. Unfortunately, they work, think, use time, are motivated, and communicate differently. And probably the pearl of wisdom here at the bottom of this slide says it all, is that if we understand what irritates us about others, we can then better understand ourselves. So again, this is that self-awareness that we talked about before, recognizing that our relationships with just about everyone in our work environment requires some nuance of understanding of their behaviors and ours, and then our communication styles. So as we move from personality to communication style, we look at it in 2 ways. We say that our personality is determined by our degree of assertiveness and expressiveness. We'll go into this a little bit. So it's a combination of those 2 terms. Assertiveness is defined as the effort that a person makes to influence or control the thoughts or actions of others. So what we're saying here is that there are people that tend to be more assertive than others. And in the class, we go through a listing of some of the professions that would typify an assertive person. For instance, a politician or a lawyer or an actor. So that's a degree of assertiveness. On the other side, we look at someone's expressiveness. That's the effort a person makes to control their emotions and feelings when relating to others. This could be a counselor or a therapist, a cleric, and then some of the work positions that we have that you see in your coworkers may actually require that they provide less emotion and then more about relating to others through a personality that is low on expressiveness. So what's your style? We use a tool called the What's My Style Matrix, and what we try to do is identify you in one of 4 categories: a style of being a direct communicator, a spirited, considerate, or a systematic. And as you see from this grid, a direct person might have high assertiveness but low expressiveness. That could be, again, someone who's in a command position. A spirited style would be someone with both high ranking on the assertiveness and expressiveness scales. So these are someone very animated, very emotional. They show their emotion in their communications, and they're trying to influence others. And this could be a salesperson, for instance. A considerate person is low on the assertiveness. They're more about listening and feeling, assessing the feelings of others. So they're very high in the expressiveness scale, low on assertiveness. And then low is the systematic person. These may be someone who's in an accounting position, someone where assertiveness and expressiveness are not important to the success of them in their position. So let's go deeper into each of these. And you may see yourself as we go through these examples, but a direct style, the strengths of these people, that they do work independently, they like to take charge, they get results, they're very results oriented, but they do like the thrill and the sting of competition. Again, high on assertiveness and low on expressiveness. So as we look at their general trends in communication, they get to the bottom line, they do speak quickly and forcefully, they'll maintain eye contact with you, and they do present their position, their summary, very strongly. You may recognize yourself in these characteristics. Then we have the spirited person, again, both high on assertive and expressive scales. They like to generate excitement. They're a dreamer, spontaneous. They seek personal recognition, and they're persuasive. So when you're communicating with these people, they like to tell stories. They focus on the big picture. They don't necessarily like the detail. Lots of voice inflection and lots of body movement. On the considerate style, low on assertive and high on expressive, these individuals communicate by listening actively. They work cohesively with others. They consider others' feelings. They're very patient, and they do value the trusted relationships that exist between them and their coworkers. So as I said, they listen well, they're good counselors, they use supportive language, and they speak softly and slowly, the considerate style. And lastly, we have the communicators who use the systematic approach. Their strengths are they're fact-based in their decisions, they ask for details, very analytical, become task-oriented, and they stay calm and rational. They don't get overly emotional when things are going super well or super bad, very disciplined. So when they're communicating with you, they present precisely, they focus on facts, they're very efficient in their speech, they avoid emotional swings, and a little vocal variety. Again, you may see yourself in that area, in one of these four styles. So let's ask yourself, considerate, spirited, direct, or systematic. Eileen?
Yes. Okay, so we're going to give you guys a couple of seconds. Based on that information, would you please check one of the boxes below? And we'll give you a couple more seconds. And okay, we're going to close the poll and show the answers. So 14% said direct, 50% thought they were spirited, 29% say considerate, and only 7% said systematic.
Well, we like the fact that we have a spirited audience here, but generally, if you do this in a cross-section of a large group in the office environment, you will get close to 25% of each of them. But this is very interesting, and you can probably identify your coworkers in one or more of those areas. So let's go back and continue now with this communication style. Now, when the stakes at work are high, you must be flexible to achieve success, regardless of which style you embrace. Businesses have a perpetual need for strong financial results. People with different styles often have more misunderstandings when under the pressures of time and deliverables. This is just the nature of the work that we do. And recognizing another style allows you to adjust your behavior to communicate and work in harmony with them. And here's the key. Who should change? It should be you that makes the first step toward the person communicating with a different style. You need to be unselfish in your commitment to affect the successful communications with others. And that's what we talk through in the class exercises. So we want you to model your working relationships when you're interacting with these different styles, or even with someone in the same style as yourself. The first step is to recognize the differences or the similarities in those styles between you and your key coworkers. And then you must drive that interaction, that change, to really understand them from the perspective that they come from. And to assist your efforts, what we do in class is we write out an action plan, and you identify a couple key coworkers that you must work with successfully in order to generate, to achieve your objectives in your job. And then we look for both daily and weekly activities when communicating with selected coworkers. So, in other words, if we're interacting with different styles, regardless of who you are, if you're interacting with a direct style, you want to focus on their goals. That's very important to the direct communicators. Keep relationships business-like, be punctual, debate facts, not personal feelings, be well organized, and so forth. If you're talking to a spirited person, focus on opinions, be supportive of their ideas, don't rush the discussion, engage in brainstorming, tell stories, allow them to share their ideas freely, and use testimonials. Spirited people like that in their communications. Considerate people, and working with them, focus on your relationship with them, be supportive of their feelings, ensure you understand their needs, be informal, maintain a relaxed pace in the communications, and give them time to build trust with you. These can be great allies if they feel warm and trusting towards you, the considerate coworkers. And then systematic, again, they like facts, they like being organized, provide written evidence when possible, don't get into long-winded stories, and don't try to generate excitement with them. Be very systematic and know your facts. They will be more responsive to your needs in your work environment if you're working with them through facts. So this is just a short overview of what we do in the larger program. Then we move on to something called the persona. What is your workplace persona? Persona, the word, it comes from the Greek word literally meaning mask, and it's a term given to the versions of yourself that are presented to individuals that you work with, how they perceive you, what mask are you wearing, so to speak. Behaviors are selected according to the desired impression an individual wishes to create when interacting with others. So combined with your communication style, recognizing how your persona comes across to individuals and groups of individuals in the work environment. So how do your peers, subordinates, supervisors describe your persona? Are you a glass half full person? Are you glass half empty? Are you overly zealous? Are you grounded in reality? So these are some of the masks that you might wear in working with others. So how we characterize the persona, we remind ourselves that our personality plays out in behaviors, and then our behaviors play out in our communication style. And then when you talk about your persona on top of your communication style, it helps between the way in which you communicate and the mask you wear, so to speak, you generate a sense of what your reputation is at work, a reputation for being a producer, a complainer, any number of terms could be generated as a result of your persona being displayed in the office over time and the way in which you communicate with others. And ultimately, that reputation does influence your career for the positive or for the negative. So as we transition into the last part of the program, we'd like to ask another poll question. Eileen?
Okay, so do you feel that your deeper understanding of communication style differences can help improve your work relationship? And once again, if you would select one of the options, that would be great. Okay, we're going to wait a couple more seconds and then share the results. Okay, it looks like an overwhelming 93% said yes and 7% said no.
Well, that's encouraging, and I think this is one way of, we don't talk in the office about communication styles, so I think it's good to reflect upon that outside of work, understand how you can work better with others, and then move into some corrective action if that's needed, or at least understand where people are coming from based upon their style. So back to our career then, after we digest our communication style, we understand more about our persona and how we reflect, how our behaviors are reflected into the general population at work. We talk about career management in this program. And the first message that we provide is that your boss isn't responsible for your guidance, for your career management. They provide guidance as an advocate, but it is your responsibility to develop your career. And the relevancy of your work is an important term that we use in defining your success. So we ask the group, does the organization at large view your work as being relevant to the overall success of the company? And if not, we should try to find out why isn't it relevant, and how do we increase the relevancy of the work that we do, or seek another position that is more relevant. And then the third thing we talk about, are you managing the status quo or leading impactful change? We talk about a bridge in one's professional career as they go from being a manager to a leader, basically to manage the status quo or to impact change. We talk about networking, both in terms of an active networker or someone that does it passively. And then important in the work environment is to be viewed as someone who gives back and helps others achieve their goals as well. As we come up to the summary of the entire 3.5-hour program, we really understand then that personal strategy for building effective work and relationships with coworkers includes first your self-awareness of your personality, your communication style, and your office persona. Understand the strengths and trouble spots of your communication style and that of others. So we look for where you could get in trouble based upon your style of communicating and how to correct that. And then we develop a personal action plan for collaborating with coworkers and work that plan both on a daily and a weekly basis. And then the second part of the program is talking about how all this comes into play with career management being your responsibility. Ensure that your work is relevant. Transition your thought process from that of a manager who maintains status quo, maintains budgets, maintains progress toward projects and so on, to that of a leader's perspective. And never stop networking, and remember to give something back. So the combination of these two themes, your communication style and your career management work, is basically what's covered in the Building Effective Work Relationships program. I'd like to now turn it back over to Eileen. Is Eileen with us?
Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Ron, for your time today. So again, we're at the question and answer portion, so if you have any questions, you can type them in, and Ron will try to answer as many as we can. We'll give you a couple of minutes for that, but we do have a question that came in already, and that is, do you have advice for someone who has trouble keeping their emotions in check?
And it's a broad question, obviously, but I think the main thing to do at first is to not disagree with someone who's very emotional, but to couch their emotions and feelings and try to scale back the conversation to something that's more relevant to the facts of the situation. So try to diffuse any personal attacks that may come from an emotional outburst and get back to the business at hand, especially if the person is making a direct attack on you or a coworker based upon something they feel. But clearly this is perhaps a spirited person in their communication style. Recognize that that's how they communicate. And then again, in this program, we talk about some of the tactics you would use to diffuse that emotion, but yet acknowledge and recognize what's behind the emotion.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, how do you deal with a boss who has a different style from yours?
And again, the onus is on you. You're not going to change your boss. Many people have become unemployed trying to change their boss. But I think what you really want to understand is their communication style. And again, as we go through this program, you see there are certain specific actions you can take to acknowledge those differences and to work within their communication style. Don't force your boss to adopt your personality style. You must learn there is, we asked the question in the course, which communication style is best? And the answer is they're all the best. So we don't want to change people. We just want to understand their perspective, their point of view, where they're coming from, and work within their communication style as best we can.
Great. The next question asks, are there situations in the normal work environment where you have seen a higher incidence of relationship problems?
That's a good question. There was one slide in this webinar which talked about when the pressure is up, and you may have seen it in your own work environment where you might be an end of month or end of quarter deadline, or a project is failing and you're behind schedule, or there's an important release date of a new product. Whenever that pressure is turned up, people certainly become more emotional, more assertive in their communication style. And again, it's just all communications are attenuated in such a way that it could result in conflict, defensiveness, and so forth. So that's when the training on communication style interactions becomes most important, when there's a deadline or something goes wrong at work and everyone starts pointing fingers at each other.
Great. And then we have, can you suggest which levels of management are best to mentor with?
Oh, okay. Well, we do talk about that in the class. There are no general rules of thumb, but my personal suggestion is if you can find a mentor that's outside your direct hierarchy of command, it's probably better for more relaxed and open communication with that individual. You could have a peer as a mentor, or you could have several mentors, and if you're going to have several, I would suggest making at least one of them a person at a level that you aspire to, because you want to get their perspectives on how they achieved success in their organization. So if you're at a manager level, find a director or a senior director. If you're a director, look for a vice president level. And I think that's best for someone who really understands the organization, understands what you're going through, and can talk offline about your work and your relationships and what you need to do to prepare yourself for the next level. And again, as we say, give back. Don't forget to serve as a mentor to those who are new to the organization, maybe the new person who's a peer of yours or works lower in the organization in another department. And I think they'll appreciate that, and you become, your office persona is elevated by doing so too. They look at you as someone who cares about developing others and moving forward. And I think if you look at how people get promoted in general, there are two things that they accomplish. They meet their objectives at hand, and they develop people. And you can say that about the highest level in your company or a junior person. If they're working to develop others and they're meeting their goals, they're setting themselves up for career success.
Great. And then there's one more question, Ron, which I will field. The person is asking if they can have a copy of today's presentation. And yes, as we mentioned earlier, we will send you a link to the recording very soon. Okay, so as a thank you to you guys for joining us today, we'd like to extend a 20% discount off any EPE programs offered next spring in human resources, management, leadership, and project management. So to register, all you have to do is go to our website, which is epe.rutgers.edu, and enter the discount code 120315. If you're interested in more research on topics by Ron, he will be instructing in the in the Essential Management Skills program. It is a 2-day program, but Ron will be instructing on February 16th and May 11th. This concludes today's webinar. If we have missed any of your questions, please send them to us at info@epe.rutgers.edu, and we will get back to you. We hope to see you at future workshops. Again, for more information, please visit our website, epe.rutgers.edu. Thank you so much. Have a great day and a wonderful holiday.